Hi and welcome back. For those of you that are new here, my name is Jordan and sat beside me we do have Holly.
Hello.
We're both second year medical students at the University of Lincoln, and today we are talking to you all about medicine interview tips and preparation.
Because interviews are scary, we know.
And we've had so many people be like, I have no idea what to even expect. Relatable. I hadn't even done a practice MMI. I was not as lucky as Holly. My first actual interview was the first time I'd ever seen the MMI format. So we thought, let's kind of talk about how to prepare and make your life easy so you can get into med school.
So when I was prepping for interviews and I was finding, resources everywhere, all kinds of things about what I should be thinking about practicing, I realised that the easiest way to break the questions down was to split them into things I could practice by myself and things I needed to practice with other people. Because there's actually quite a few questions that you can do on your own, you already know the answers. So, for example, a question you should hopefully know the answer to, because if you don't, I'd be quite worried, is why are you applying to medicine? you know why you've picked this course, and hopefully, unless you've gone eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or you've gone for a dartboard method or any kind of random selection as to what uni you're going to, you also know why you've picked the specific place to apply. That's two questions in one, you're done. You've got the answers to those questions, it's just a case of phrasing them. You can practice that by yourself. The answers are already in your brain, you just need to get them out of your mouth in a way that makes sense.
So, you already know the answers to the questions. The only thing that I would say be careful of, especially with the why medicine question, in case they throw you a curveball, know why you specifically want to be a doctor. Because they may, let's say you've said, I really want to help people. Admirable, incredible, we love it, why not a nurse?
Or a physiotherapist.
Or any other
someone in the army,
professional.
or any kind of therapist, or I don't know, customer service in a shop. They help people.
So you don't want to be sat there like a deer in the headlights, rabbit in the headlights, whichever animal you want to use in the headlights. Have a look. Think about why you actually want to do medicine. What perks of medicine make you attracted to that over any other person helping career?
Yeah, you might not get thrown that question. It depends on where you've applied and which interviews you're sitting in, because some of them are probably nastier than others.
Yeah.
But if it does get thrown at you, at least that way you've got something you can respond to it with. You're not just going to sit there like, oh, I did not prepare for this.
And if you have prepared and you don't get thrown the question, but let's say you have a 7 or 8 minute station and you've kind of finished talking about the specific reasons why you wanted to do medicine from whatever's gone on in your past that led you to that decision, you can then actually be like, oh, and actually I thought about doing this, but I like medicine because, and it just shows you've researched the profession a little bit more, get them extra brownie points.
Definitely works.
Also, when we're talking about what you can do alone, know your work experience, any volunteering you've done, because you can tie that into so many stations. Hasn't got to necessarily be medical. You may have been on a sports team, and you can talk about teamwork. And the beauty of it is, it's a different station each time. You can keep using that same thing. But I would always say pick it based on how you would mention something in your personal statement. If you want to use it, why do you want to use it? What value does it add? Why is it going to be beneficial to you in the future? And go from there.
I mean, yeah, my personal statement, I put in that I'd done work experience in a physiotherapist clinic and that I'd had a part-time job in a bakery. I had a panel interview at Southampton and we spent nearly a third of the interview talking about the bakery and the issues I'd had with management there, and I think we maybe spent 2 minutes on my actual medical related work experience, so it can be literally anything.
So next thing to talk about is the things you can do with other people, or that you should do with other people to get the most benefit out of it. Those really are talking about your role play style scenarios, where you might have someone like we had in one of our interviews who is behind on their work. But also,
an experience we're all familiar with at some point.
Absolutely. But they're also, what would you say your one was? They've been going out every night?
Yeah, they've been going out every night, they've been with a theatre company and they had quite a big role in the cast, but after every rehearsal they were going out, and that was most evenings, and they were falling behind, and it was all about work-life balance. So that's something you need to practice with another person, because you can't really predict how somebody's going to respond, but practicing with multiple people can get you a range of responses, and then you kind of have an idea of how you'd respond to all of them, like a general basic format that you can then expand on.
Because some of these universities in their stations, some of them will be quite mild, they'll be quite nice. Like we've had one where you help someone with their library card application, and like we say that one where someone's had a work-life balance issue. Sometimes you get them where you might have to break bad news to a patient, which is a lot harder, and if you haven't practiced it and they start flipping out on you in a role-play sense, you're not going to know how to react.
Yeah, so my sixth form ran like a mock interview circuit for us, and they bought a company and they were fantastic, and one of their stations was to break bad news to somebody, and I had to break this news to this guy that I'd run over his cat with my car, and he freaked out. He was on his feet, he was slamming his hands on the table, he was, you know, shouting and everything, and I sat there and I was like, sorry? Like, I had no idea what I was doing. Thankfully that was a practice one, and yeah, they probably wouldn't be that aggressive in like an actual interview, but I wouldn't put it past some people to go on the nasty side of things just to try and challenge you a bit.
You definitely, basically want to make sure you're prepared enough to not get the giggles.
Yeah,
Is
that's
what we're
also
trying to
another
say.
problem.
Because I remember one station where someone had like kind of been drinking a bit, and you were talking about something, and it's almost like you're talking to almost like a brick wall, and they keep being like, yeah, but I like doing this. Yeah, but I like doing this. And then internally, you have to really not start giggling and approach it from both sides of the argument.
Yeah.
So practicing with other people is so beneficial, because people respond differently to if you're practicing with a teddy bear.
If your teddy bear starts answering back, I have questions. I'm just saying that now.
Ted.
Hello. Another really big one to do, you know, sort of you want that back and forth response with, is stuff like ethics scenarios, because you can go so in depth with those. You can start at a really like light level. Let's say your station is like 8 minutes long, you will end up in a really deep trail of like different ethical considerations and all sorts of things. I had one where we spent the entire station in like really engaged debate, which often doesn't happen. You like most stations, you get to a certain point and it kind of dries up a bit, and then you end up on the like non-interview awkward small talk phase. This station, we were going from start to finish the whole 8 minutes. I was like, I'm out of breath, you know, I want help. So practicing that, you know, back and forth with people is really helpful for stuff like that.
The other thing with ethics is there are things you can look up alone before you go into ethics scenarios. So look at some big legal cases within medicine. A big thing, I know that I ran some mock MMIs, and we were looking at things like Gillick's competency and Fraser guidelines.
That comes up quite often, definitely.
Look that up. If you don't know what that is, look it up. If you ask us nicely in the comments, maybe we'll answer it. So go and do some research. And also just talking to people helps you improve your communication skills, which, let's be honest, if you're going to be a doctor, quite important.
You kind of need those, you know.
And of course, practicing being empathetic and actually showing that you understand both sides of an argument and that you're able to be a nice person.
Because that would really be useful if you're going to be dealing with people who are ill.
So we've talked about how you can prepare alone, and we've spoken about how you can prepare with other people, how you should prepare with other people. Let's talk about some resources you can use to actually make these all easier. A big thing we have here, the top on our list, Medical Schools Council.
They have tons of stuff on there, tons and tons.
So many. I was looking this up, and there's actually like a Medical Schools Council interview thing. But you have to give your email to register, and I kind of couldn't be bothered to look it up. I'll leave the link down below.
Yeah, chuck that down there. Hopefully that'll have some useful stuff on it.
You can go and register. It looked like it was free to sign up, and they had a lot of decent looking resources from what I could kind of see without going in. But also, they have some documents called What Makes a Good Doctor, which very useful. Have a look at that. It would let you know what things they may be expecting from you. And the thing was called Preparing for the Medical School Interview.
So if that does what it says on the tin, that's basically your best friend before these interviews come up.
Somewhere else that you can look for some resources is the Medic Portal.
I love the Medic Portal. It's basically my best friend. It got me through my UCAT, my interviews, the whole thing. There are so many resources on there, so many links to other resources. It's basically everything you could ever want, but it's laid out really nicely. The vast majority of things are free. There are some like question banks that you do have to sign up for, but the majority of stuff on there is free to access, and I love it. I probably wouldn't have got in without it.
When on the Medic Portal having a look to prepare this video yesterday, there were some things that came up that I thought would be important just to kind of draw some emphasis to. Obviously, if you go onto the Medic Portal anyway now, you're going to see these things. Like, I haven't made these up myself. I have found these on the Medic portal.
They are actually there.
There is something called STAR, that's with 2 R's, so STARR, talking about how you can actually incorporate things, which I think is what I mentioned earlier when talking about when to include your work experience or your volunteering.
It's kind of like a structure to help you do that.
And it's situation, so what was it? What was the task? What were you trying to achieve? Action, result, reflection. So a bit like when I was saying in your personal statement, you pick something, why did you pick it? Why was that useful? What does that show off about you? Why will that make you a good doctor? It's another method for that. It goes into more detail on their website than I'm going to go into now, but that is just something to consider.
So another place that's actually really useful for information that you might not think about, you might in all of the midst of thousands of things that are surrounding you in the ether of the internet, you might forget that the uni websites themselves can actually be really helpful. So not all of them, but some places will have kind of example recommendations for resources that they might recommend for interview. So that's really handy because obviously we've not trawled through every medical school website. There might be a few out there that have got, a nice range of stuff on there for you to check out. Some places, Sheffield comes to mind. Sheffield releases the questions to you before the interview. Sheffield emails you your questions about 2 weeks before the interview so that you can actually prepare. I don't know if anywhere else does that. I don't know if they're still doing that now that it's online because they're moving online for this year. I did check earlier. But you never know. It's always worth considering that there might be some information that you hadn't thought about that's actually tucked away on there. The one place you don't want to go, the student room.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. You will regret it.
It's just a bunch of people with straight A stars or 9s going, do you think I'll get an offer?
Or at this point in the year, it's quite usually, would you think I'll get an interview? I've already got my interview for here, so you definitely won't. It's the most frustrating place on the planet. People use it to stroke their own egos, and it's not worth your time. I don't think I've spent longer than 15 minutes on there, and it's infuriating. It's really not worth the effort. There are so many better places to find resources where you aren't going to be stuck scrolling through tons and tons of ego-stroking waffle. Yeah, you don't need to sit there and feel bad about what other people have got that you haven't. They're not you.
And the other thing to remember when we're talking about interviews, and obviously we've said already, we know some people have got offers for interviews. Some universities won't offer interviews until February, March,
some of them
April.
take ages to offer things.
So just because some people that have applied to different unis, or even applied to the same uni, have interview offers and you don't yet, it literally means nothing.
Unless you directly have had something from the uni, an email, a UCAS notification, anything, have had something that says, sorry, we're not going to interview you, don't look at other people's offers of interview from the same place and assume that you're not going to get one. Because what other people have is completely irrelevant to what you have. It just doesn't matter, and getting stuck on thinking about that is not going to do you any good.
And also on the note of looking at the university website, one, don't restrict yourself just to the universities you've applied for. If it has a medical school, it may have resources, it should hopefully have resources for medicine interviews. And also when you're preparing why this uni, obviously then look at the one you've applied for and see if there's anything interesting. If you can bring up an interview and show that you've researched that university, they're going to love it.
The only thing I'd say on that is make sure you're mentioning the right thing for the right university. Don't get really excited about something that they do in Manchester and bring it up when you're being interviewed at Sheffield. They're not going to appreciate that at all.
And the last thing we have mentioned on our notes about resources is other YouTube videos. There are other people who've sat down like us and given you their interview tips because they've been through. There are universities that actually have role-play stations that you can watch and see how they work. And also, there are other people who've been through it that just talk about their experience of what the interviews were like.
There's tons of videos out there like that. Tons of them. They're really easy to find. They come up on my recommended all the time.
So basically, just go and have a look. YouTube obviously has an absolute plethora of videos that are really relevant to the medical school application process. Have a look. This is me saying look at other channels. 100% have a look, because there are so many people out there with so many different experiences. You may be applying somewhere that we didn't apply to, so unfortunately, as much as we'd love to, we can't help you as well as someone who's actually there and who's done their interview process. So have a look around.
There'll definitely be stuff. It's really easy to prepare for the interview. Well, I mean, not easy to prepare, but it's easy to get so hung up on preparing for it that you forget that the day before and the day of, you need to look after yourself. So, you know, make sure you get plenty of sleep the night before. Obviously, for some of you, that might not be entirely possible, especially if you're going somewhere quite far away. Although, I know some people who did take the option of getting a hotel and, you know, staying up the night before so that they didn't have to do a really long drive in the morning. Obviously, it depends on where you're going to interview and what's easier for you.
If you can, I recommend it.
Yeah.
For my interview here, I did stay in a hotel just outside of Lincoln, and I cannot imagine having to have driven 3 hours and then be here for about 10:30.
Yeah, there is that. Especially, obviously, it depends on your interview time slot, but some interviews start quite early in the morning. I think Sheffield, my interview slot was 9:30, and I think we were the first round of interviews of the day, so we were one of the earliest. So obviously, I had to leave home at 5:45. Now, I didn't mind doing that because I slept in the car, my dad drove, wasn't my problem, but, you know, for some people that could be a bit too much stress on the morning of. So, yeah, try and plan that ahead, see if you can figure that out. Make sure you're getting plenty to eat as well. You do not want to be sat in an interview thinking, I really, really want McDonald's right now, because especially if there's a McDonald's like practically on your doorstep as you are coming onto campus, Lincoln, McDonald's is everywhere. You do not want to walk past a McDonald's, end up being really hungry, and then go and sit in the interview and be like, I want nuggets, because you're not going to be on focus, and it's really, really distracting.
The other thing to be aware of, if you're driving, make sure you know where you need to park. You don't want to spend the morning of your interview trying to find where's best to park to get to the building. On that note, know where you have to go. Just knowing the campus isn't enough. I know that Lincoln campus here, the building they hosted the medical school interviews actually isn't on campus.
It's like on the back of, it's like towards the back of campus, but like more on a little sciencey research park that's tacked on the end.
Yeah, so you need to have a look, because realistically, you want to spend your morning as chilled as possible. We are aware that being chill the morning of a medical school interview is impossible.
It kind of doesn't work, but
we don't want to add to that stress.
Working towards being calmer helps. I mean, personal advice from me, try and have the same like routine before. I mean, I'm saying every interview. I had all 4, so I had a routine before all of them. Even if you've only got 1, have a little routine. Have certain things that you're going to do. So I listened to a certain musical in the car on the way up, and every time my dad and I stopped at Starbucks and I got a latte, every single time. And every time afterward, even after the interview, because I'm the kind of person that really freaks out and overthinks everything I've said, even after the interview, we'd always get some kind of food. So have yourself a little routine. Figure out, you know, what's going to get you into a state of mind that is a little bit less frantic than what it probably is going to be to start with. And it really does help. Trust me. Like, I found that it made a huge difference. Huge difference.
The other thing as well, make sure you know what you're going to wear. Obviously, lots of interviews are online, so this tip about knowing where to go, where to park, all of that isn't as relevant, but equally, routine 100% is relevant, and knowing what you want to wear and being aware of your surroundings are very important. So knowing what you want to wear regardless, in person or online, have it out the night before so you know it's ironed, make sure you know where it is so you're not frantically trying to find it, and don't sit there in your pyjama bottoms. I know someone who got asked to stand up in their interview. Thankfully, she was wearing something appropriate, but she knows someone who wasn't.
No.
So don't do that to yourself. Wear the full outfit.
Yeah.
It's not worth the risk. It's not worth the risk.
I mean, pick something comfortable. There is no point in going for a really, really smart outfit if you're there the whole time like, I can't breathe and I can't move my arms from my side and I can't really do anything, but at least I look smart. It's super easy to get comfy, smart clothes for relatively cheap. Primark, go have a hunt around some charity shops, Asda, it's not difficult. The comfier you are in your clothes, the more comfortable you're going to be just with everybody else. If you've got long hair and if you fiddle with things like I do, just tie it back. It doesn't have to be anything special. Mine was just in a ponytail. But when I'm nervous, I play with my hair, I play with anything that's on my hands, on my wrists. At one point I had to sit with my hands tucked under my legs because I was fidgeting so much. So, you know, try and keep things that are going to distract you out of the way if you know you're the type to play with things when you get nervous. Because it's really telling that you are nervous if you start going like this every time you answer a question.
They understand you will be nervous.
Oh yeah, they're aware of that, but they don't want it to be really visible, you know? They're expecting you to have kind of figured yourself out and be a bit comfortable.
Just before we jump into the questions that we were asked by you, we just need to give a quick apology for this horrific camera angle. My phone decided to just absolutely die on us, so we couldn't use a tripod. And here we're trying to record on my iPad, but it's kind of propped up on the tripod underneath it to get it at the right height. So just an apology. The content is still there, it's just we're a little bit on an angle. But I do hope you enjoy listening to the Q&A, and if you enjoyed it so far, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe for more content.
So before we jump into answering a couple of the questions that we've had from you, we're just going to quickly talk about summarising what we've said, but also making a point that is only applicable to MMIs. Each station in your MMI is a clean slate, which means you can use that to your advantage in that if you had a good point in one and it applies to another station, keep on using it.
They're never going to know. They don't talk to each other between stations. Just have a chat, you know. Use the same thing over and over. They're not going to find out until afterwards, and by then it's too late.
So it's fine. And also, if you feel like you've messed up on a station, you feel like it's gone horrifically wrong, so what? You have so many other stations. It's one station. Each new station is a clean slate. Obviously, no one wants to mess up a station, but if you're going to mess it up, it's better to do it in an MMI.
Yeah. if it happens, and it does, my interview here, I ended up in tears, full on crying in one of the stations because the stuff we'd been talking about had upset me a little bit. I came out of the station, borrowed some tissues off of one of the other applicants, and went into the next one like nothing had happened. I was like, right, I am still shaky as anything, I am struggling, but you know what? I'm just going to pretend that I'm fine, because I'm really good at doing that, and just sail through the rest of it. I think I was about halfway through the interview. They let me in, I'm here now. One station going wrong does not mean you're not going to get in. Multiple stations going wrong because you are so hung up on the first one that you make mistakes in the next 7 will stop you getting in.
So let's have a look at some of the questions that we've been given. The first one, hopefully I don't need to answer this because it's already been answered by the time we got here, was how do you even prepare? Like, what are you supposed to be preparing? Genuinely never been told.
I hope we've covered all of that. If not, comment, tell us. I'm sure one of us
We'll do another one.
we can do another one, hopefully in a room that's slightly quieter than this one. We can find a way, we can speak, we can,
Get in
a few
touch with
resources
us.
your way. Tell us what's worrying you, and we can try and figure out how to help, because
We are here doing this YouTube thing or this TikTok thing
both.
because we want to help people. So if you have, it hasn't got to be an interview. If you have a question about medical school,
literally
uni
anything,
life, ask us please.
even if you think it's really random and really stupid. When it comes to medical school, there is no such thing as a stupid question, because nobody knows what's going on ever. So it's fine.
We don't know what we're doing.
Oh yeah, I don't know what's going on half the time, and I'm still here, so ask. It's fine.
The next 2 questions that we have are very
similar, so we can probably do them in one here.
We've got, what are some important events on Western medicine to be aware of, e.g. the Harold Shipman case, discovery of penicillin, and how do you prepare for hot topics? I feel like there are so many and I'm scared they might ask me about one I've never heard of before.
First of all, the thing with, if you get asked something you've never heard of before, be honest. Don't sit there and go, oh yeah, I'm familiar with that, if you don't know, because you are only going to screw yourself over, because they'll ask you questions, they'll want to be more in depth, and you will sit there feeling like an absolute lemon, and they'll be like, okay, this kid has no idea what they're on about. Be honest and say, I wasn't aware of that, that's not something I'm familiar with, however, maybe here's something I am familiar with.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can always pull out another thing that you've maybe done some casual research on or read about in the news, anything like that. You can always pull that out in response if you're not quite sure, because otherwise that's a whole MMI station wasted.
Yeah.
And
it can still show off.
Yeah, you can still show off.
It's like that question even says, I thought there are so many I'm scared they might one I've never heard of before. If you've heard of some, just like I say, honestly, I'm really sorry, I actually haven't heard that, but I've done some research and came across this.
Yeah.
And spin it in your favour.
Yeah, spin it in your favour. So, I'm really sorry, I've never heard of this, that you've described to me. It sounds incredibly interesting. There was something I came across a little while ago that I found really interesting, and I was wondering maybe if we could speak about that instead. If you've got a nice interviewer, they're probably going to say yes. If you've maybe got a slightly less nice interviewer, they could well guide you through the case they wanted you to do with a little more help, because they're aware that you haven't encountered it. You're not going to encounter everything. We don't encounter everything. Who knows? Nobody is ever going to have read every bit of research ever. It just doesn't happen, and they obviously know that. So there's no harm in sitting there and being like, yeah, no, this is completely new
I've
to
never
me.
been asked though.
I've never been asked, but it probably depends on where you apply.
Yeah, so also the events like West Medicine to be aware of, but even in general, to keep up to date with news. If it's like in the mainstream news, the pandemic and the vaccines,
Oh yeah.
obviously have a clue what they're talking about there.
Just have a general idea, maybe I'd say maybe go a little bit deeper than like the standard news report level, but not so much so that you're like reading the genetic code of everything in the COVID vaccine. You just need a little bit more information than that, and it'll see you through fine. Anything coming up on the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, whichever news you watch, see if there's anyone you follow on Twitter that does anything researchy. TV doctors do stuff all the time.
TV doctors, yes. But also, I know that on my iPad, if you have an Apple device and you go onto the news, you can actually just select medicine.
Yeah, that's a
scroll
function.
through.
Yeah.
So you can just every now and then have a look at that, see if anything interesting is going on, and then even if you do get asked something you've never heard of, you'd be like, oh, yeah, like we said, sorry, don't know that, but have you seen it? And you might even know something they haven't seen.
Exactly, yeah.
So,
and you want to make that into as much of a discussion as possible, because that question realistically is, what's your outside interest in medicine? What's your take on this, on a certain stance of medicine? If you can pull another study out your back pocket and go, actually, I'm a bit more familiar with this one, they might be perfectly willing to go along with it on that, because they're still getting the same out of you, they're just not quite doing it in the way they planned on, which is not always a bad thing.
basically what we're saying almost is fake it till you make it.
Essentially, yeah.
Also happens in like your interviews as well. If you're a little bit like nervous, act confident.
Pretend that you're confident.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard actually to come across as arrogant or cocky if you are terrified. I was terrified through all four of mine. All four. They all offered me a place, so I must have done something right. And that's pretending that I didn't think I wanted to die every second, you know? Like, I was sat there like practically shaking at one point, and the more at ease you pretend you are, the more likely they are to believe it. It's very hard to go over the line into arrogant, into cocky, if you are genuinely panicking. But realistically, you're all going to be scared in one way or another.
Yeah.
You're going to be fine. Pretending is not a bad thing.
So they are our tips to how you can ace your interviews. If you have any pending questions, please ask. If you did enjoy the video, give it a like, comment any questions, any feedback. Subscribe to the channel, and also subscribe to Holly's channel, HollyDoesMed. She is a featured channel anyway. It'll be in the description as well.
I'm very active on TikTok. If you have a question, that's probably the easiest place to ask me, because it's the quickest place for me to get back to you, whether it's a comment or an actual video. Either way, you know, subscribe to us both, follow us both on TikTok. One of those places, if you ask us a question, we'll manage to get it answered. We'll respond in one way or another, and it will be fine, and hopefully we'll give you what you need to know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
See you all in the next one. Bye.
Bye.